conversation is still on divorce, and we're not going to be having this conversation alone. We already have our guest seated live in the studio with us. His name is Tunji Babajide. He is a life coach and a relationship expert. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Thank you for joining us.
We really like that you're here with us this morning because, you know, we've already started the argument.
The conversation, and it's been quite interesting.
Yes.
We have different perspectives.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it. Before we talk about divorce, I want us to backtrack a little bit. Okay. We started the conversation on why traditional men are interested in contemporary women. So he said that he doesn't really believe that traditional men are interested in contemporary women. In fact, he feels like it's the women that think that traditional men have interest in contemporary women. I do not agree, because I have seen examples where, you know, a regular traditional man wants a contemporary woman, but after he has, you know, dated her or married her, he wants to change her, somehow condition her to how he wants his wife to be, knowing fully well that that is not how she has been, you know, created. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm very careful about stereotypes. I believe that different strokes for different folks. It would be unfair to make the narrative a predominant one. I think that different people, based on the script they've been running from childhood, which is a product of the environment, the parenting, they have believed certain things. So some people believe that, some other people believe otherwise. However, I think it's fair to gift everyone with silence, because everyone acts based on what they know at the moment, and the more they know, the better they will act. So for people who think traditional men like to marry contemporary women, okay, maybe there's certain beliefs running that. Those who believe otherwise, I also believe there's certain beliefs running it. But I think that the crux of the matter is that our culture seems to want to erode the realities that the Western world is throwing to us. So in between, so all of that mix, we will find people who hold on to that, and it worked for them, and we'll find people who didn't hold on to it, and they found the opposite experience. However, I think that in Nigeria contextually, and maybe in Africa, we seems to have men who look corporate but yet hold on to those values, and people who are a bit insecure because they don't want their career women to be winked at in the office. They also would like to, you know, hold on to someone who is traditional, who they can tame because of their insecurities and their egos. So it's a mix of several things packed together, you know.
Very interesting. You know, I think that's, I find it interesting that, you know, the modern woman, quote unquote, in Nigeria, and this is part of my problem with feminism. You know, I called myself a feminist a while ago, but then I did some research into feminism and realized that it's a big sham, and there's a lot of confusion and contradictions within feminism. There's a lot of contradictions within feminism, and you know, I think that it's a given because it's a human because of the human factor and the human perspectives on feminism, as in the human, how different human beings or how different women would interpret what feminism means to them. So now I'm more of a fan of, or an advocate of, gender equity. So I find it interesting that you find modern women, quote unquote, who still would submit to, you know, traditional gender roles. That, okay, I want to be a woman that achieves something in this world and leaves a mark of society, but at the same time I want to be a good mother and a good wife. And I find that interesting, you know, that they're still this kind. And I feel like, you know, we see a lot of that in Nigeria, though.
Yeah, we see a lot of that because of the kind of script an average Nigerian family runs. So we're all products of errors, we're victims of errors of our parents, and because our parents didn't know better, so we have passed certain beliefs, certain values to the third generation, the fifth, the sixth, and the reality of it is you will never act beyond what you know. So when two people, you know, so I do a lot of marital distress coaching or therapy, and I always say to them that husband and wife don't fight, and that's always like an icebreaker, and they're like, hello, we came with with a troubled, stop that. And I always say to them, if, what's your name? Sorry?
Ade.
If Ade grew up with his uncle, and his uncle had anger issues, and you grew up with your mom, and your mom, permit me to say, has a sharp mouth, and you grew up, both of you will pick values from your uncle and values from your mom. So ultimately, when both of you are having a clash, you are having a belief and value clash. However, your values are not originally yours.
Right.
So who truly is? So when we ask ourselves, so who is fighting? Is his uncle that he lived with, who is the product of another stepfather, you know, and your own mom, who is the product of maybe our own mom. So you are typically not fighting. You are just having a value clash, and a belief clash, and a culture clash. So and that will lead us to the issue of the divorce. So a lot of times when people say we're divorcing, we're saying that two nations are separating by force, because everyone is an ambassador of their values, their beliefs, their, you know, whatever it is that, you know, scripted them. So when two people come together, they never really sit down to ask the questions. So what am I dropping to be able to build another nation? What are you adding to be able to build another nation? You know, because until those questions are asked, we would enter into building another nation with assumptions. And those assumptions, they say assumptions, they blur or they color our reality. So a lot of people enter into marriage with assumptions. So the first thing during courtship or dating, or part of the things has to do, is to have a conversation around, I'm an ambassador of a value where my dad is the lion of the Judah of his own house, like my dad was, and my mom is a Western person, so we call everyone by first name. Both of you now come together. So there will be, as ambassadors, there will be clash, value clash, culture clash, belief clash. So when I hear things like we have irreconcilable differences, I just hear two people who have confident ignorance, who don't know they're doing the wrong thing, and they're not even aware. You know, so it's sad that that's the narrative, but the beginning of a new nation, the beginning of a better world, is for us to visit the family systems where people need to stop becoming accidental parents and has to become intentional parents who are equipped. Just the way you go to school for a BSc, people should go to school for parenting, because we keep replicating the errors of our grandfathers, of our fathers, of our, you know. So when I see people say something, one of the things people around me, I always say to them, so I say, from whose perspective? So when you say, it's okay to kneel down to greet everyone in the morning, or it's okay to call everyone by first name, so I'm always asking, from whose perspective? Because my perspective is subjective to yours. And I think maturity is the ability to gift you with your perspective till you feel otherwise. So when I begin to argue with you that prostrating is superior to calling each other by first name, we're just all expressing confident ignorance. We're not being flexible enough to gift people to hold on to their convictions and their beliefs till they think otherwise. So if divorce is going to be looked at, it's going to start from how different people were raised, what ambassadors, what values are they ambassadors of, what beliefs are they ambassadors of, did they discuss it? Because covenant also is about the weak and the strong coming together. So that means when husband and wife are coming together, they must be able to say, I'm dropping this particular value, I'm dropping this particular thing, I'm picking this, the same thing. Until that conversation is heard, we will have marriages enjoy bliss for a while, then suddenly they begin to have situations where the husband and the wife, they're physically present but they're emotionally distant. You know, so it's a whole lot. So divorce is a process. It's never overnight. It's usually an aftermath of different, you know, emotional bullets thrown at each other. You know, people talk about domestic violence a lot, but the bigger one is emotional abuse. You know, because if I hit you, you can go out and say, oh, I have a sore on my face. But if I call you foolish, I say you're a bastard. I mean, I use very, very, very funny words, negative words. It has a toll on your emotions. So that's why most women who come out of divorce or come out of domestic abuse or emotional abuse, they feel less of their worth.
Wow.
You know, so it's a lot, and it's never a one size fits all. different couple might have the same experience, it might be the same domestic violence, it might be, let's go back to the conversation, the African man trying to dominate the woman. But you see, the responses will be different. The way they feel will be different, because the divorce itself, it's a difficult conversation to have, because there's no smooth divorce. You know, I always encourage people, attempt to resolve before you dissolve. So if you attempted to resolve, get a therapist to help you work on, you know, the issues, and you give it an attempt again and it's not working, then you can begin to separate then on your way to divorce. So it's a very big conversation we can't have in 1 hour.
In fact, I love that we're having this conversation with you, because I mean the perspectives that you're bringing all of this is different from how I've been seeing it. I mean, so you know, you said something about people's value system, belief system clashing with each other and all of that. But you know that, take it or leave it, we are all products of somewhere, of an environment, of a society, and we come from different places, especially if we're coming from different cultures. So there is a high possibility that our belief systems would definitely clash. Our value systems would definitely clash. So we've seen people that, notwithstanding, they still decide that, okay, so we're going to weather through this storm. While some other people, at the end of the day, they're like, okay, so you know what, we cannot do this. So are you saying that people that decided to not go ahead after all the clashes are doing the wrong thing? Because you called it something. Confidence, ignorance. Oh my goodness. So does that mean that at the end of the day, I mean, so we're using Bill and Melinda Gates as a case study. They've been married for 27, they were married for 27 years, and at the end of the day, they decided to call it quits. Are you saying that they're confidently ignorant? So
let me bring that in perspective. So when I say confident ignorance, it means that people are doing the wrong thing, but they're not even aware. So if we're going to look at whether they're doing the wrong thing or not, the first thing is to first set a benchmark. To say, okay, so for this family, what is right? Because what is right for Melinda and Bill might not be right for Tokwe and Larry. So the first thing is to set a landmark, a milestone, to say, okay, so what are the things that would guide this family? You know, so I said to people, the same way your organization has core values, it has a mission statement, it has a vision. When a man and a woman are coming together to form a nation, I like to call family nations, they should be able to say, okay, what are the core values that we're going to hold for? What's the mission statement for this family? Is it just for us to sleep to each other and have children? No. What's the vision? You know, so those things will guide how to measure the milestone. So if it was never heard, that means both of them were taking the journey on assumption. So and you say assumptions would always find a way where truth will, you bring your searchlight on the truth, and you begin to feel, so why did I go into this? You know, so it's subjective to what were the standards of the family. It's subjective to what they think is right, what they think is wrong. And you know the way Western world and Africa is, there's some things they hold on to that we feel. So it's going to be dependent on what they have had as their stake. So if they didn't have one, so that means they have been running a marriage or running a home on the assumption that it's going to work based on unsaid values, on, you know, treated conversations, you know. So it's not going to be fair to say they're doing it right or they're doing it wrong. I think that both of them have gotten to a point where they feel they can, you know, stay without each other. And I'm sure you know that it's not everything that happens at the back end that we see on social media. So there's a narrative that is probably going to unfold a few days. I started saying something about maybe Bill had a girlfriend, you know, and all of that. So, you know, whatever
some
it was.
Juicy gist.
So it's unfair to bring the axe on their head and say it's right or wrong, you know, because we don't know the backstory, and we don't know the full story. So I still respect what they represent. I respect each of them, their individual lives, but I think we should allow them just heal. Sadly, social media will not stop talking about it. But they're not also in a good, because it's divorce. That means two of them are going by force their different ways, you know. No matter how much they think Melinda is a rich child and all of that, the truth is, if you have spent your life with someone for 27 years, I mean, there has been a lot into each other. So it's a whole lot put together, you know. So they would, if they truly want to heal, they should see a therapist.
All right. So I want to ask about resolve, right? So on was on Tuesday, wasn't it? We actually took this conversation, and I was saying to the presenter on seat that day that I've noticed that in our generation, or not in our generation, in society now, when it comes to divorce, it seems like a lot of relationships would rather leave the relationships than fix the relationships. They will rather dissolve the relationships rather than resolve the relationships. And for me, it's something I've spotted. It's not something that I'm making a judgmental statement on. That why are people leaving a relationship instead of fixing it. So now we're seeing a case study of a couple, Bill and Melinda, who have been married for 27 years and have decided to dissolve their relationship. Then we also took a case study, I believe it was on Tea or Coffee, one of our trending topics, where we saw a marriage where after 20 years of divorce, they came back together to renew their vows. So this couple, they divorced, and then 20 years later, they decide to come back together. I want to talk about fixing and resolving, situation. This thing, I really love what you spotted when it comes to belief and value clash. I think that looks at it very specifically. I've never really thought about it like that, but when you mention it like that, it's really, it puts a microscope into some of the challenges that couples, may be facing. So how is it that, a couple after 20 years are able to resolve their situation and come back together, but another couple for 27 years are maybe not able to find common ground? So what can be the grounds, for these kind of divorce cases or resolution, as the case may be?
First thing I would say that it's a choice driven by knowledge, driven by superior knowledge. It's intentionality. So I say that the KPI. So part of what I do also includes some HR stuff. So we use KPI. I'm sure every organization has a KPI. So I say the KPI to measure love in marriage is also KPI. K for kindness, 2 for patience, I for intentionality. So if you are going to make marriage work, you've got to be kind with the person you call your spouse. You've got to be patient with the person you call your spouse. And you have to be expressing love intentional, forgiving each other intentionally, projecting the future intentionally, living together intentionally, and it can go on and on. So for those who couldn't come back or who feel it's time for the marriage to work, it was a choice, based on their prejudices, based on their perception, based on the state of their mind. Those who feel otherwise, they've also, the Yoruba proverb says that a man that has not tasted 2 homes does not even know which one is better. So maybe, perhaps, they are both attempted to make it work, or they tried to date someone else and they feel, my ex is better than this guy here, So it's about choices, it's about, commitment, it's about decisions, and what formed it can be a movie. You see, the way our brain, as a psychotherapist, the way our brain works, you'll be shocked. It might be that she was just watching a movie and, there was just something aligning with the decisions about to make. And she says, it's time. Let me go make this decision. So like I said, the way we make our decisions, the back end, just like, when you have a laptop, the operating system, no one sees it. We just see that, HP pops up, and Windows 7 pops up, or if it's iPhone. That's the same way our operating system has a lot of intricacies. It has a lot of things that influence it. So there's what we call trigger. So it might just be a trigger to a decision. So we don't know what led to it. Right. But I will leave it with saying that everyone is entitled to not just their opinion, to the choices they make, to the decisions they make, and the life they decide to commit to after this.
Okay. Let's talk about the children. Okay. There are times whereby the couples would have to go their separate ways, but then it has a major effect on the children, especially when the kids are not grown. I mean, if they are adults, it may not be as huge as if they've been married for 5 years and they have a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old and whatnot. So how do they go about this? What do you think is the right way to go about it, especially when they have children in the mix?
Okay, the first thing is it's not always a sweet thing. It's never a sweet thing to when children who are victims or of divorce begin to find the path to another life. Usually, from research and from the work I've done in the past, I found out that people who are product of divorce oftentimes have variances of dysfunctionality. So they begin to second guess themselves. They begin to be in doubt. And like I said, there's no stereotype. So some people, they compound stronger. Some children who are a bit laid back, they feel, whole life has happened. It's time to take my life in my hands. Some other people withdraw. Some other people get into, and there's several disorders. Some other people go into sleeping disorder, eating disorder. So their cognitive abilities are also very challenged. So they're like uncertainty. They have to shuffle between two homes. So the negative emotions they experience, the spectrum is so wide, that it requires assessment to be able to help a child know what they're dealing with at the moment, and seeing a therapist to help them, process their thoughts and find the path to a new life. However, for the parents, it will be good for them to also show them love, and also explain things to them, no matter how young they are. Because a lot of times we think that children don't know their left from their right. But you see, our brain doesn't forget anything. So at some point, they'll be able to, even as they evolve, they'll begin to recall, how mommy and dad, separated, how they felt. So I also encourage children who are product of the separated homes or a divorced home to see a therapist, because, like I said earlier, physical abuse, you see the wound. Emotional abuse, you don't see it.
Yeah.
Some of them won't see it till 20 years. Some of them will even go into very low self-esteem. They'll begin to second guess themselves. Some people become promiscuous. So the impact cannot be quantified until the psychometric tests are deployed for the children. Then, because they say diagnosis precede prescription. So they have to be diagnosed to know what exactly they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Then there's a prescription on the therapy or the psychotherapy they need to go through.
So now, okay, let's focus on that for very quickly on the effects that a divorce can have on young children. I want to focus on young children very quickly. Now, in your work, what advice can you give, couples who are thinking of getting a divorce but have children? And I'm talking about, preventing very diabolical, effects, preventing very, heinous effects on children. How can this be better managed that the child still feels, grows up to prevent some of these dysfunctionalities that you mentioned?
Okay, so like I said, both parents need to either together or separately have that conversation with them to say, okay, so this is where we've decided to do this. However, they also need to be validated, to be assured of the future, to say, okay, I will pay your school fees, I will do the needful, but this time we have to do ABC. Don't leave them in the dark. That's the first thing. Secondly, it's also good for them to see a therapist. Because gradually some of them will act like nothing happened, but you will begin to see, sometimes it shows in their grade in school. Sometimes it shows, some of them just get extremely aggressive. Some of them go into rage, So, and it's even, research has it that children who are victims of divorce often have tendencies to enter divorce in life if they don't seek help. So it's important for parents to get them a therapist that will help them resolve, whatever emotional states they find themselves. Then also it's needful for both of them not to see things from a competitive perspective. The way divorce is in this part of the world. Mr. A gives the children 5 naira, then the mom hears and says, okay, your dad gave you 5 naira, me, I'll give you 10 naira. Don't say spiteful things about your partner. That will help so that we don't raise children who can't separate the issue from the person. Because the children learn by observation. So it's also a good time to show that you can unconditionally love the man you claim to love before. So yeah, we had your differences. Then be careful the words you say. Don't say your dad that was those F words, because you are already building the children's vocabulary for the future. You are building their perspective. So, and I say to people, when you see parent divorce, make sure that they deal with the issues before, or make sure that they heal before they deal. A lot of times, people who, I mean, even people who are divorced and want to give marriage a second trial, if they don't heal before they deal, they will replicate, they will pay Peter for what Paul did, and they will replicate the same issue because they're also running a script, and that script is not subjective to the personality of the other person. That script is independent of everyone. Meanwhile, when husband and wife come together, whether it's first marriage or second marriage, they're meant to be interdependent. So you are still an ambassador of the beliefs, the values. Whether the values were sabotaging your dream of a home or they were enabling it, you still bring it on the table. So it's important to be able to get people who are separated or divorced to sit down and ask if they have enough to build another home before they give it an attempt. That's where I believe a new nation starts, when we begin to visit families and we are more intentional about creating schools where people who are winking at each other, who are dating, can attend, so they can be equipped to build a nation that so they desire and the nation they will be proud of in the future.
Wow. Let's take it back a little bit. Before there is a divorce, there's probably a marriage. Before there's a marriage, there's a relationship. There's dating, there's courting, whatever we want to use to qualify it. What is the right way to date somebody? Like, how do you go about it? Because, I mean, thinking about how you said it, you mentioned, I will not forget the confident ignorance. Because,
love it.
If you've been able to get it right from the beginning, that is, you understand the other person's value system, you understand their belief system and all of that, maybe you wouldn't be confidently ignorant and then mess things up as time goes on. So how do you date correctly? Well, what are the value systems that you should consider before getting into a relationship or decide that you are going to get married to this person? How do you even know that this is the person that you should marry
and spend the rest of your life
with? Removing the religious aspects, because now you know that in this part of the world we're very religious people, so we would always add that religious aspect, that okay, so when I pray I would get this and this and this, but then
that's chosen for me
and all of that, yes. But also there's certain things that we need to pay attention to, because at the end of the day, there are times whereby even after, people still make mistakes. So how do you date correctly?
Okay, the first thing is self-awareness. An average person gets into marriage as a stranger to himself or herself. So when I say self-awareness, I'm not talking about your name and your height and everything. I'm talking about having an understanding of your prejudices, of the script you're running, having an understanding of how the environment you grew up shaped you, how the values that your parents, rubbed into your face. Because our values, our beliefs, we unconsciously pick them. So there's this very general statement of, I want to find my better half. No, be whole before you find anything. So the whole must now meet the whole. A lot of half are meeting one quarters, and yet they don't make one because they're not aware. So I recommend people to have an understanding of their emotional variables, they have understanding of emotional intelligence, ability to manage, understand, and monitor, understand, and manage their emotions, ability to do a personality assessment and know exactly what are the strengths of my personality, what are the weaknesses of my personality, Then when you are clear with that, you now begin to ask yourself, what kind of a nation do I want to build? Okay, when I say that, it means what kind of a family do I want to build? What are the values that I want to hold on to? What can I overlook? What can I hold on to? Now, I'm not trying to preach or talk about being perfect. I'm just trying to say, know the things that you have, know what you need, but don't go into marriage because you want someone to complete you. Go into marriage because you want to bring something on the table, because marriage is for two good givers and forgivers. That's also critical. Then it's also important to know that there's certain red flags. I say to people, don't marry a personality, marry his pattern.
Okay.
So if you haven't done your due diligence, the way our parents used to do, let's say both of you now, they are dating, they will send someone to your village and find out if you had issues, mental health issues in the family, they'll send someone. The same thing. The same way a smart person should do your homework. Don't just be carried away with the biceps, the hips, the lips, and the fingertips and all of that. Do your due diligence, because now we're having cases of people who package their children for a man to marry, only for them to get on vacation or on honeymoon and discover that the lady or the guy had some schizophrenia and started exhibiting it. So in fact, some churches now are asking us to help them arrange how they will be able to include mental health, assessment into the premarital counseling journey, because all of those things are beginning to evolve, and this is that's another symposium discussion. So it's good to know the person. Also good for you to have a relationship coach, an accountability relationship coach that is independent of not your own family and not of you. That's the mistake a lot of people make. When Mr. T and Mr. A are dating, then Mr. A offends Mr. T, then Mr. A will take the fiance's issue to his own family. I mean, they will take sides. So I say to people, have someone neutral who has a knowledge about marriage, that can guide you, that can be the referee, because there would always be conflict. Because when two nations come together, you would always have, all of that. And this is going to be table shaking. Dating and courtship is not intercourse time, it is interview time.
Wow! Please, you have to say that again.
Okay, dating and courtship is not intercourse time, it's interview time. I want to know, why do you want to marry me? There are a lot of chicks out there. Why do you want to marry me? There are a lot of guys out there. What's our vision? Where are we going? What's the picture of the future? Because a lot of people have commitment phobia. They enjoy the journey, but they don't like the bus stop. They just want us to keep dating. Let's just keep going out for dates. Let's go by the beach. Let's wear a bikini. Let's go and swim. So when are we getting married? No. And usually commitment phobia is a trigger from a hurt relationship in the past that has not been dealt with. So that's why I say before people, when you break up from even a relationship, see a therapist, because if you don't heal before you get into another relationship, you will deal with Paul with what Peter did.
Wow.
You know what? We need to have a second part of this conversation.
It will be my honor to be back.
We would love to have you some other time. Thank you so much, Tunji Babajide, for breaking this conversation down for us this morning. Wow, guys.